All right.
Yeah.
So I feel like when we're running around being these, boss babes and living in this overly masculine culture that breeds the glorification of busy and pushes us towards these abrasive ways of being, that it can be really challenging to step back into our feminine. And I know you've given us some tips on how to do that, but I want to know specifically about, you talk about like breast massage, your breast massage course and crystal wand course and self-pleasure. Can you dive into that a little deeper with us and take some of the taboo away from that for us?
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. So my courses are really focused around self-intimacy, right? Self-intimacy, reawakening our senses and healing body, mind, spirit through embracing our own touch. And there's so much to say here, but what I will say is that, yeah, we live in a world that is so focused on how you look, your comparison in ranks to other people, doing good, being seen as smart or intelligent, getting things done, accomplishing, doing your goals, all of that stuff. And we can be so focused on how we look and all of that stuff that we forget about that it's really all we really wanting to feel is liberated in our own experience of our body and of like life. Like we're wanting to feel peaceful in this body that we have. We're wanting to feel good in our body. We're wanting to feel sexy sometimes. We're wanting to feel relaxed and peaceful and like pleasure. That would be amazing for everyone. I don't know if anyone can raise their hand right now, and if you are, please send me a message and tell me that that's not what you want. So yeah, my courses are really focused around that, because at the end of the day, that's all we really want. And it's like, I don't want to diagnose anything, but my courses, the goal, that is what we do. We work with our sexuality, we work with our pleasure, we work with opening ourselves to be able to see ourselves in these spaces, and then just working on our physical body. Like breast massage, for example, is literally just a massage. It's like a massage as if you were massaging your arm. It's just your boobs. And so there's pleasure that happens there, but it's not necessarily a sexual thing. Like I don't see breast massage as quote unquote sexual. It's self-healing and it's self-loving and it's releasing emotions, and there's so many pieces to it that are actually not sexual. And so yeah, I feel really passionate about my courses. I'm actually in launch of Sex Goddess right now, and I actually have one wand by me on my bed. And yeah, I mean, this work, I really believe that this work has made me who I am today. I wouldn't have the confidence to be here right now if I didn't open my sexuality in the ways that I have and learn how to work with the energy and channel the energy and create tantric practices and rituals for myself that really allowed me to dive into and surrender into my feminine and into really safety on this planet, safety in this body, safety with this health. Like there's so many pieces that my courses do that are so the point, and we're accessing it through sexuality, but it shifts the way we relate to our partners when we're full sexually. And so there's so many pieces.
Is there like a flow state we get into in that sensuality and embodying sensuality that can be kind of related to what you hear a lot that's trendy right now is like getting into flow state? I don't know why that's popping up for me, but do you feel like that can be something we tap into easier when we practice sexuality and sensuality and being with ourselves that way?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I talk about often is that we usually have a pleasure bar, and we usually only allow a certain amount of pleasure in. And so when we can practice consciously bringing more pleasure in, we can experience more pleasure throughout the day. Like it extends into when we're lying in bed with our lover at night, or it extends into when there could be a fight or there's a trigger, and then we tune back into that pleasure practice we did. We remind ourselves of all of those waves that we felt with ourselves, and that retrains our body to hold that vibration, or maybe not that vibration, but closer to that vibration more often in our life. And if we're not tuning into that vibration and into that pleasure, we're looking to other things to get it. Maybe we're looking towards sex, which is obviously we want to look towards sex to get pleasure too. But there is something to be said about having a personal practice with yourself that then flows into your everyday tasks that allows the everyday to be less mundane and more pleasurable.
So to me, that makes me connect the dots as the same way that meditation would, retrain your neural pathways and bleed into the rest of your days and life in order to keep you, able to come back to a focus point, able to come back to a calm. But this is more about your body and how its own almost muscle memory, in a sense, is able to get back into alignment with the frequency it wants to embody, the peace. Hopefully it's peace over and over again. Cool.
Completely, yes.
I liked you had a recent post about self-pleasure and how it can be really useful to not think about anyone else in order to pleasure yourself, but to just be turned on by yourself, I guess. And I thought that was really cool. I had never heard of that, or I had never seen that suggestion, and I just saw it today, so I haven't put it into practice, but I'm excited to try.
Yay. Okay. So this is exciting. I feel excited to share about this. So yeah, oftentimes when we are, again, there's nothing wrong with thinking about someone else or bringing someone else into this space necessarily, especially if it's integrated, if you're not like hiding it from yourself and you're actually allowing yourself to fully experience that experience. Because oftentimes we do bring people into fantasy, but it's like people that we wouldn't ever give ourselves permission to actually be sexual with, or it's like, it's
I have
not
full permission from myself for Ruby Rose.
Just putting it out there.
I love it. So, but yeah, anyways, practicing self-pleasure without bringing another person into the space allows you to attune to your body in a way different way, right? It allows you to feel sensation in a way different way, where it's not about sexiness, it's not about arousal, it's about sensation, it's about feeling, and it's about your emotions, it's about like what's actually happening in your body, and it's about touching yourself with love and care and compassion and sexiness too, but it's about like really being there with you. And I shared in the video, and this is what's in Sex Goddess, but I share tantric practices that we use breath as one of the pieces that we work with. We use breath, we use sound, and we use visualization of either light, like things like this. So it's kind of like you're doing yoga with your sexuality in the space. It's like you're kind of, in a yoga class, they might tell you to imagine that there's light pouring in from your crown as you're in Shavasana, right? So it's similar in the practices that I share, and in what I'm tuning people into is this space where it is about that healing and that softness, and about being with yourself and your sexuality in a way that it's really just about you.
Yeah, it makes it all about self-care.
I really like that. I definitely need to establish that as part of my practice. I will let you know how it goes.
I'm also curious, how do we identify and unwind where we've become a bitter victim? Or in your words, on your page, you said a bitter bitch.
Yeah. So I wrote that post because what I had realized was that my quote unquote bitter victim was the part of me that was emasculating my partner and basically wanting him to change, telling him that he's doing things wrong. And really what it stemmed from was that I didn't have better boundaries at the very beginning and also throughout the relationship. And so when when I didn't like something, instead of having a hard boundary, I would say a boundary, but then if it wasn't respected, I would maybe be easy about it or not let it go. Something as simple as, like, for example, if I'm sharing a bathroom with a partner, I really like organization and cleanliness. And I just know in my next relationship that that's a hard boundary for me. But because I had let something as simple as that slide so much, well, what happened was then I became like, what's wrong with you? Why are you doing this? But that's just maybe his way of living, and it could be totally fine. And there might be a woman that loves how that particular thing, right? But because I didn't hold better boundaries throughout the relationship about the things that I need, I then started to blame him. Like, you did something wrong, or you're doing this wrong, or what's wrong with you? But it's really it was about me. So it's the bitter victim piece is really about taking personal responsibility for the ways that you don't hold boundaries toward your intimate relationships and to certain patterns that are coming through. And yeah, if you're in a space where you're like feeling like you're emasculating your partner, or you're feeling bitchy, or you're feeling moody, or you're feeling naggy, or you're feeling like a victim, like how did this happen to me, why I'm in this relationship, look at your boundaries, look at your desires, look at how you let things slide.
Yeah, I think that I tend to be such a giver that if I give so much and I'm not asking for much back, so then when they don't give back, I resent them for it, and then I become bitter in that way, which is really a boundary as well, because it's asking for what you want. So being more, having boundaries on yourself too, to not overgive to where you're so spent.
Completely.
Yeah, I don't even know too that, like, I think giving is a very broad term. And I think, we only think of giving in the sense that we want to receive, right? Because we might be taking for granted the way they're giving in some other.
It might not be our love language. Yeah.
Yeah, or just because we're taking it for granted, we're not even noticing the effort that's that piece is being put forth. And that's what we're feeling in the moment, like you're talking about, Jade, is that your piece that you think you're putting all this effort towards and consciously like putting out for them and giving with is something that they might just take for granted. And that probably comes from their own domestications and, other relationships and maybe their childhood. I don't know. But whatever the reasons are, I feel like we kind of pair up with partners too that might take what we consider our biggest giving, our biggest like gifts almost for granted sometimes. And that's such a trigger. And then we do the same to them, or they become through the relationship. And after time, we also become accustomed to knowing that that's what they are going to give. So then we do take it for granted if we didn't in the beginning.
Yeah, it can be such an addicting pattern, this one, because when we give something and it's either not being seen, not being received, like it wants to be received. And so instead of going, I'm giving and it wants to be received, but it's not being received here, so maybe someone else will be a match to receive it, we go, I'm giving and it's not being received. Let me try harder. Let me try harder. Let me keep going. And so that's a pattern that I see a lot of women get into, is that, or people in general, like we give and it's not being received. And that becomes an addictive behavior until we recognize that we actually are ready to be held and to be given to as well and to be received, right? And so it can be like this pattern that keeps going until we realize that I actually don't want to drain my energy. So I am going to give, but I am going to be aware of like, I'm going to give 100%, but it stops there. Like I'm not going to go 200%, right? Because giving 100%, yes, give your full heart, like open as fully and deeply as you can in where you are, because that's where you are. But do notice if you are going overboard in a way that's depleting your energy.
Yeah, that makes me think of being empathetic to a place of unhealthiness, like overly imbalanced in that sense of giving and with no boundaries. I guess that's what you're speaking to.
Yeah. And how do we learn how to identify what is our responsibility and what is theirs?
This is a tricky question. I feel like both people in relationship need to take 100% responsibility all of the time, because when we get into it, you did it or I did it, anything like that, we're not aware of the fact that no one's wrong. Like we're all learning and we're doing relationship together. And so if, let's say there's a trigger or an argument between the couple, if both people can come in and say, okay, I'm willing to see my part, and the other person's going, okay, I'm willing to see my part. Let me take ownership of what was mine and you take ownership over what is yours. That is a very healing experience, because both people are admitting and sharing where they see themselves. And especially if both people are open to their blind spots. Here's what I can take responsibility for, and I'm open to share for you to share what I can't see, and then vice versa. And that is like standard healthy relating, to be in the experience where it's not about what you did wrong or what he did wrong, but it's about, okay, what just happened and how can we both own our pieces here.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think also remembering not to ever have the attitude of like, I matter more than you do. I feel like we can easily get caught up in that we don't even realize that we have that mentality, but we get stuck there subconsciously.
I've done that.
Yeah.
Completely, especially when we're in pain or we're triggered in that moment where we're literally triggered into little girl or little boy, and little girl or little boy is like, I matter most. Like, I'm crying, pay attention to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's bringing awareness to that part of ourselves, and also cultivating a relationship with our inner children,
Yeah.
loving them up.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
huge. My mom used to always tell me, Mercedes, the world does not revolve around you. So
Oh gosh.
I always think about that. I was like, are you sure? Because it feels like it does.
Feels like.
How can we learn to self-soothe so that we can start being responsive instead of reactive in those times as well?
Learn to feel and process your emotions. So it's really about having the tools to do emotional release practices, whether that's screaming into a pillow or like banging your bed or crying or taking a hot shower. Or just laying down on the floor with a hand on your heart, or curling up into a ball and cuddling yourself. Like, all of these things are your body learning how to remove and release the emotion that's coming through. Because in these moments, like, the most important thing that we know how to do, that we can do, is self-soothe. And if we are triggered in a moment, it's important to not judge or try to figure out what we're triggered about, or to try to intellectualize what's happening, and instead just allow the emotion to move through our body. That's when we get a lot of clues about what is actually going on. And usually if we're in our brain trying to go, okay, he did this and I did that and I'm so triggered, and we're in that space, it is not going to be healthy and it's not going to be helpful. And so self-soothing is about entering the body and giving yourself space to emotionally process whatever is coming up.
I wanted to touch on two things that you shared recently on the idea that, so the first thing is the idea that men want more sex than women, being a complete lie. And the other is that the masculine is attracted to the feminine pleasure and receptivity. So can you kind of go into those with us a bit? Because this kind of rocked my world. I was like, but how? I do this?
Yeah. So, okay. So yeah, I remember when I was growing up, that term that men want sex more than women, it was just everywhere. And I think that it is not true. The feminine in general, in all of us, wants to be filled by love, wants the experience of love and connection and communion and safety and bliss and experiencing emotion. All of that is possible in sex. Like, sex brings so many of the pieces for the feminine. And especially since there's this huge feminine awakening on the planet, women are becoming more aware of themselves. They're doing yoga, doing like all kinds of things, right? Like, there's a feminine awakening happening, and it's been happening. And so the women that are in that zone generally, and also any woman that's even connected to her body, can want sex more than a man, because the masculine is more concerned with like silence and spaciousness and presence. And so again, it's kind of creating categories. So I don't want to necessarily, it's not true for everyone, right? Some men want sex more than women. You can't really say that it's all this or the other, but there are a lot of women that are experiencing right now on the planet that they want sex more than their partners do. They're in marriages or they're in long-term relationships, and they're the one that wants more sex. And it's the desire to commune. It's the desire to be in a space of love. It's the desire to fill up on life force energy and to release emotion and to experience moments of bliss together. And yeah, the receptivity piece that I had mentioned, I shared that because for the women that do want more sex, like if you're like, yes, I'm in a relationship and I want more sex than my partner does, and that can be actually a very challenging experience for a woman when that's happening, when that dynamic is happening, although it's happening a lot. And so the receptivity piece is a guidance and a reminder that the masculine is attracted to the feminine when she's not in neediness or needing him. And so that receptivity piece is like waiting and being in pleasure and allowing him to come in. So my example was to like touch yourself softly while laying in bed next to him, or to even self-pleasure next to him, or to dance in front of the mirror while he's taking a shower just for yourself. Because doing this, you're tuning yourself into your own pleasure, which is an attraction for the masculine. They're like, whoa, that's juicy. I want some of that, right? And it's not, again, if we're coming in going, I want sex, you never want sex, why don't you want sex? It's again that emasculation piece.
Right.
So if we instead focus on our own pleasure and being receptive and like calling him in, I mean, we're all like witches. We have all these archetypes in us. So can we like be that and feel that in our body and then call him in from that space?
Takes a lot of vulnerability.
Well, yeah, and because I think the initial thing that gets triggered in me when we talk about dancing in silk in front of him or being pleasure in bed next to him and pleasuring yourself is that, you know, I'm thinking, well, am I seeking the validation from him that he will come and decide he wants to be next to me, or I will be calling him into me? Because what if he doesn't, right? And that's the vulnerability piece. But like you're saying, if you're fully doing it for yourself, which I think takes a shitload of work to get to a place where you can actually be doing it for yourself without like hoping this potential outcome will be the outcome. So I'll work on that too.
It's homework.
Got flustered.
It's fun homework. And that's the thing too, is that even if there are pieces of you that are like, oh, I'm doing this for me, but I'm also doing it for him. Of course, there's parts that are doing it for him as well. But then if he's still no, like there's going to be times where that happens, where you're like in lingerie and you're giving him a lap dance and he's like, babe, I just can't. I have work. Like, I just can't, you know? And so those are the moments to go like, okay, I am so hot. Look what I'm doing. I am literally in lingerie, sitting on his lap. I am so sexy. I'm going to go experience this myself. Right.
I have such a shame trigger that comes up though. But yes, I totally get what you're saying. I feel like that rejection in a sense would feel so like I would feel like I was all of a sudden I'd feel like I'm acting so desperate, you know, and that's something I have to work out obviously in myself. But yes, if I can stay with it and be like, but I am turned on. Why do I need necessarily someone else to tell me that that's okay or not okay? Yes, I will. I'm working on it, Ashae. I'm already working on it.
And yeah, it's a good way to rid yourself of ego too.
True.
Also, sometimes this is just a good thing to add, is that sometimes we have an idea of what sex means. And so oftentimes when either a woman or a man says no to a sexual advance or anything like that, sometimes they're thinking, oh, well, it's going to be how I'm thinking in my brain. So you might also add like, just come sit next to me and grab my hips, or like come kiss me while I'm on the bed. Like there's so many different ways to experience pleasure together. And sometimes like when I just heard of the rejection piece, like I get that. And we can open up to so many different varieties of what sex is, what pleasure is, what a connected sensual experience is. And so we can open that doorway up as well for our partners, and our partners can open that for us. Because sometimes we might not want to have sex, but we're totally available for kissing, right? And so there's opening up that communication is really important. And like you said, working on that piece around the shame and choosing in that moment that comes up, because it probably comes up in various levels to anyone in that moment where there's quote unquote rejection, but then just choosing like, okay, here's that rejection. Here's me feeling rejection. What can I feel instead? Like, do I want to feel this anymore? I know I don't want to feel rejection right now. So like, what can I do instead?
Ooh, I like that. And for me, a lot of it is coming up against that piece of me that I would call toxic masculinity in me, you know, like where I want things to turn out the way I want them to. So if I have this idea that men are supposed to be the person who's always chasing and, you know, the person who's pursuing or something like that. And so me coming and asking them for whatever I want, or telling them that these are the things I want even, or doing a sexy dance, or laying in bed and pleasuring myself in front of them, all these things that might trigger that shame and desperation idea in my head is actually the toxic masculinity that we're talking about and sometimes shaming men for, that's living in me and saying that I can only have this, you know, like this this idea that fits in a box of what sex is supposed to look like for me. But the reality is that there's a zillion other options, and I need to step out of the toxic masculinity, step into maybe more of my femininity so that I can open to all those options.
Yeah. So we have 2 questions from the Majic Mob before we go into our staple question. We do a little lightning round at the end.
Okay.
So Katie asks, when is the right time to leave a relationship?
So it's so different for everyone, right?
Yeah.
But a really good question to ask yourself is, am I spending more time processing and thinking about this relationship and all of the quote unquote problems or issues or things that I have that are not in alignment or things that are up for me about it? Am I spending more time doing that than I am doing other things, my purpose, my joy, my friendships? Like, am I spending, like, how much of your energy, your mind, your awareness are you spending processing, thinking about, crying about, journaling about the relationship that you're in? Because you can also experience relationship where it's mutually beneficial for both of you, and there's not as much processing, there's not as much like, this is taking up all of my life, right? And again, some people, we need to have those kinds of relationships and to see and witness our shadow, to go through our triggers and to really grow in a lot of ways. Those are really growth relationships, but there comes a time where you have to be honest with how much emotional energy you're spending on the relationship that you're in.
Yeah. Her other question is, what is your most important daily practice?
I guess I can't pick one. I think if I would pick one, because it leads me into the others, but the one that I will pick is every morning before getting out of bed, I put my hands over my womb and I just start massaging my belly and just start massaging my body and awakening my body with love. And I ask myself, what do you need this morning? And I leave a good portion, a couple hours of my morning for whatever my body says. So that might be breath work, that might mean a little meditation, that might mean just taking a long bath, but I'm always asking my body what it needs in the morning, and I tune in and I practice listening. It takes me back to that original piece that I said at the beginning, that so much of my journey is about listening to my body. So that's one thing that I can't do without.
I love that. What about in relationship? What would be your most important practice?
Oh my gosh. Honestly, a self-pleasure practice.
Really?
When I'm in relationship. Yeah. Because there are so many, it's so easy to close our hearts and to close ourselves off from being our highest, best selves in relationship and coming and relating from a place of celebration of the other person, not trying to tear them down, all of these pieces around the masculine and feminine. And so when I'm in a relationship, when I do my self-pleasure practice, I'm opening my body and I'm opening my heart to love again. I'm letting go of maybe a trigger or a challenge or something that came up earlier. And I'm allowing myself to reintegrate into a higher field so that I can relate from that space. So definitely self-pleasure. And I don't think that people do self-pleasure enough while in intimate relationships.
And I've heard you speak on a listening practice that's about sitting with each other, at the end of the day and talking about the highs and lows of your day, but just listening, which I can see how that's the important part, is just listening.
Totally. Like not saying anything, but just being like, yep, I receive you.
Yeah. So that practice was a basic, remind me of that practice, I guess, because I'm sure I can remind myself later, but here we are. Let's tell the listeners too.
So the practice, I'm not sure if I remember which one you're specifically tuning into.
I want to say it was, so the specifics were something like you would sit in front of each other and basically say, here were the best and worst things that happened.
Oh, right.
And it can involve them, I guess. And then they would do the same back, but nobody's giving any feedback on each of those items, especially if they're
right. So yeah, at the end of the day, it's a really beautiful practice you can do with your partner to create a nice environment for yourself, maybe light some candles, get into a good mood. And then, one person will say, well, first generate eye contact with each other. So make sure that you guys are present and you guys are really listening to each other. And then one person will start and they'll share the challenges of my challenges today were, and you can do anything from I got a stomach ache while I was on a podcast, or when you left this morning without saying bye to me, I felt insecure, or whatever it is that comes up. And you go until you're complete, right? You just say all the challenges. And then the other person says, thank you, I receive you. And then they say, my challenges were da 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 da. And then the other partner says, thank you, I receive you. And then you do your wins. So the best parts of my day and the things that I'm so grateful for are da 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 da. And then the other person receives that and then shares the best thing about their day and what they're grateful for. And then you close with a hug or a kiss, or that's it. And the best thing about doing this before bed is that your subconscious mind can process anything that came up during the day, any triggers or challenges that you may have had, and you're not getting into your mind about it of like, I need to figure it out. And this actually takes a little bit of discipline, because it's totally easy for our mind to go, wait, that shouldn't have been challenging for you. Like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Let's talk about that. That's not true, right? It wants to fight. It wants to challenge. And so this practice is getting into the habit of being able to listen to our partner's experience without needing to change it at all.
Yeah, I really like that. I definitely want to implement that in my
That's a great way to end the day. Yeah.
All right. So there are a few short questions we like to ask everyone who comes on the show. So first off, if you could hug your younger self right now, what would you say?
If I could hug my younger self right now, I would say, don't focus on what everyone else is doing. Love yourself. You are perfect. Your path is set. You're safe.
I love that. If you could have the whole world read one book, which would it be?
Mine. That's not out yet.
I was like, wait a second.
Wait, what? No, but I am spending this year writing a book, so I'm super excited
Amazing.
about that.
Amazing.
Yeah, but definitely I would say a sort of Bible for me, and one that really changed my life was the book Pussy by Regina Thomas Howard.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
It's really good.
I downloaded it because I heard you say it on another episode.
Yeah.
All right. If you could whisper one phrase to everyone on the planet, what would it be?
You are held.
I liked that.
Yeah.
I felt held when you said it. Thank you.
Yay.
Before we let you go, where can people find you online and sign up for your courses?
So come to my Instagram. It's at Ashae Sundara. I share on stories there almost all the time, almost every day. And you can find out about all my courses and everything that's happening on there. And I'm just really close in this moment of recording this podcast to launching my new website. So it's ashaesundara.com. And I'm really excited I've been working in the background of just my new site. So it should maybe be out by the time this podcast gets launched.
Beautiful.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And if you couldn't tell, we are so ecstatic about the work you're doing, and it is already changing. I mean, just in the course of this podcast is changing my life and probably my relationship, hopefully for my husband's sake. So thank you so much for being such a light and doing all the work and putting all the effort in and becoming so knowledgeable to make a safe space for us to feel like we can be held and experience a better embodiment of our fullest selves.
Thank you so much. That feels like honey on my heart. It feels so good. Thank you.
Sorry, go ahead.
Just saying, I feel really, really grateful to be in this space, and I loved all of your questions and the way that I can feel that you are really in my work as well and have really been enjoying it. And so I'm really celebrating both of you for being in integrity with the people that you bring onto your podcast. I really resonate with that.
Thank you so much. Your Conscious King post is one of my favorite posts I've ever read on Instagram. I screenshotted it and referenced back to it, and I sent it to so many people. So thank you so much for all of your posts, and just for how much you're so vulnerable in all of it's kind of like, here I am, take it or leave it, but you're so graceful about it at the same time. So thank you so much.
Thank you, loves.
All right. So we will, of course, send you all the promos we make off of this and let you know exactly what the date is that we'll be airing it. I also wanted to say that I was on your website, obviously building this bio, but wanting to take some of your courses, and you're building a new site, so this might not be an issue, but I couldn't purchase any of the courses. So I don't know if there's a link broken, but
Thank
I'm
you.
sure
I
you
mean,
want to make that money. So
yeah, it's been on my list and I keep forgetting because like I basically treat my website like it's off, but clearly it's not off. It's clearly on because I've been working on the new one. But yeah, I'm going to change that ASAP.
Okay, cool. I mean, if you're not even right now promoting that stuff, it probably doesn't matter. I just happen to be on there and be like, I do want to do that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We'll let you know about a week before this airs and send you the little video promos that we make.
Okay. I'm super excited. Thank you both. I loved it.
Have a good rest of your night.
Thanks, Ashae.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay.
That Conscious King post of hers. I don't know if you know which one I'm talking about, but it's so good.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I wished that I could make it into a magic trick because it's just so good. And it reminds me so much of London Angel Winters and Justin Pierce's work. It's like the awakened woman, but she turned it into Conscious King instead. It's so good.
I love that. Yeah. And we'll figure out a way, I'm sure, to share that with our audience just through something in the future now that's rolling around in our heads. You just saw that today. So
yeah,
we need some time to let that settle in. All right. So
speaking of that, what's your magic trick?
Yeah. Speaking of all that magic. So my magic today is coming actually from John Wineland, who Ashae said she just did a workshop with. He is one of our favorites as well, to just get in tune with who we want to be in this idea of energetic agility and this idea of sexual polarity, because he's really an expert in that realm. And then how we want to interact with our partners when it comes to moving in and out of those energies. And so obviously goes very much in line with today's show. But he says that we have to be careful about the way we think. So if we are embodying a thought like there are no good men or no good women out there, that's exactly what we're going to experience in the world.
Yes.
Yeah, right. And even if someone amazing walks into our life, by having that underlying script running in our minds, we're going to find reasons to project onto this person to cast them into that negative light. So it's very important that we become aware when we are telling ourselves stories like that, and that we rewrite them to something that will serve us better. So that's my magic trick, is I'm inviting you to take a look inward and locate any stories that may be generalizing the opposite sex and write it down. So for example, you might be thinking to yourself, men are pigs, men are liars, or women only care about money, women are manipulative. And then once you've got that clear, whatever your stories are there, whatever your lies are there, write down what your ideal statement would be to replace that negative one. So for example, you might write down, men can be kind, they can be loving and honest, women can be generous and fair and trustworthy. So something to replace that old script, because you don't want to draw in a person that is embodying any of those negatives, or draw in someone amazing and then project that they are going to be that negative thing and create it out of thin air. We want you pulling all those yummy, juicy people into your life that you're so excited to create union. And
yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
I was just reading today about the benefits of mantra and how it is like speaking something, it like leaves the patterns on your brain.
Absolutely.
So I love that.
And we do that. We hear those things over and over again from our friends and family and from TV.
That's the thing with mantras. You're repeating it too. You're repeating it over and over.
Yeah.
So my magic trick I pulled from our guest today, from her Instagram. She posts so many just golden nuggets, and I always feel challenged to be better and it's in an attainable way, which is nice when I see her post. But this one is about triggers, which I have been so low on sleep lately that I have been very easily triggered. And so I'm going to read her post about how we can use these. So she says, your only goal when you're triggered is to regulate yourself out of the trigger. That's it. It's not up to your proactive, personal development, goal-oriented fixer mind to come in and save you. It's not the perfect moment to talk and figure out your relationship since things are up. When you're triggered, you leave your body. You get brought into your wounded self, the one who wasn't loved, cherished, adored, seen, respected. You can easily murder relationships, moments, and damn, even worlds when you let the reptilian brain of yours run the show in trigger zone. So the only real work when triggered is to get back into your body. That's it. It's simple, but it takes major devotion because all parts inside will fight against it. Your ego wants the spiral of energy, the thoughts that continue to destruct. But it's alive, but I get to speak my truth, your ego says. Resist and ground into you. Your body is coated with love from source. Your breath knows nothing but life. You can come back. Don't push it on to the person who triggered you. Take responsibility. It's your trigger. The simplest way to embody this, when you're triggered, simply repeat these words to yourself. I am triggered right now. Enough times until your brain reminds your body that it's time to shake it off, relax, cry, release, and move it. Before talking about it, do this. Before speaking your truth. Your trigger doesn't have unconditional love and empathy in mind. It's primal. The only thing to do is to come back to body and to source. Take yourself on the journey. Isn't it good?
I love.
She really challenges me.
Yeah. Take responsibility. It's your trigger. Like, that's shit. Damn it.
I know, because there's, even though we know we're triggered, there's something about us that still wants to make it the other person's responsibility.
Yeah, because
like, I felt triggered because you brought this up to me, or when you said this, it really triggered me. We're still making it about them.
Yeah,
we're not. Yeah. So I mean, this, like, I really, really needed to read this.
I always need to read it, but I have gotten better about when I feel myself triggered, because it is a bodily feeling. So I think, like she was talking about earlier, is, somatically stepping into your body and noticing whenever you feel that feeling of anger, that feeling of, even heat sensation that happens when someone says something that you don't like, and then go into that first, because that's kind of going to be the source of how do we get out of this thing.
Yeah, because then you're also not speaking from that triggered place, and you're out of the emotion of it completely.
It's tricky, yeah.
And you may not even feel like you need to say it anymore, to be honest. True,
because you might own it all the way. It might be 100% yours again,
you realize it's yours, so you're like, oh, now I'm kind of embarrassed that
I reacted.
Yeah.
And another little piece to that is that there's this cool thing that another guest that we're going to have on actually down the line here might speak to more in depth, but front loading. So when you feel yourself triggered and you're really in the shit with your partner, for instance, or with your mother or whoever it is that's triggering you, you notice those feelings. And if you are like, look, I cannot move through this quick enough in order to come at it from a responsive place versus a reactive place, right? Come at it from a place where you're heart-centered. You can do something called front loading, which is basically saying, I am triggered and this is how I'm feeling right now in my body. And I don't want to say anything more until I feel like I've moved this through my body and can come from that conscious heart-centered place. If you'd like to speak on this further, then I need you to know that that's the place I'm coming from right now, and it's probably not going to feel great. So if you're anchored enough and you're still in your heart center and can take the triggers that I might be triggering in you, then we can go there. But that's the front loading you do in order to get to the, in order to put a piece in front of what you're about to say that might be coming from something that's not heart-centered. Even so, I think it's better to find a way to walk away from it, to come back to it when you have a better softness about it.
Yeah. Yes. Keyword softness too. I wanted to mention before we say goodbye that our listeners truly get us. And as much as some really hectic days can have us feeling overwhelmed and like we're struggling to keep up with the work we're doing here, or what's the point, it makes it 100% worth it when our Magic Mom speaks up and shows us the love. So thank you guys for every review that you've left.
Yes, you guys, when you guys take the time to send us heartfelt reviews, it fully redeems us and reminds us why we're putting so much time and effort into this. Jade is a mother of 2 toddlers. So as you can imagine, she's got a lot on her plate. And I am traveling all over the world. You guys see my Instagram, you know that. We are busy gals. And this is the work that fills us up probably more than anything else we do. Not besides Jade's children. I'm sure that fills you quite up. But it is
fills
a labor.
Me up and it empties me at the same.
Exactly. It's a labor of love, you guys. And we are just so glad to have you filling us to the brim. And so much so that we're able to spill over and share our own light with the world. So thank you so much. Without you, we would not be able to do this work. We appreciate you.
Yes. Yes. Thank you guys so much. All right. So we're also just super thankful that you're tuning in and taking this journey with us. If this episode held some magic for you, please share it with your friends and family. This would mean so much to us and help us as well. Don't forget to join us on our Instagram page at The Magic Hour. also and let us know what your favorite episodes have been so far. We appreciate all of your feedback and want to know what's lighting you up.
Yes, and we release a new episode every Monday, so you can catch us again next week or go listen to some of our past episodes in the podcast library now. We'll meet you there. Until then, be a light.